Committee of the Whole of the Davenport Community School District Board of Directors to order. Our first presentation, I'll turn it over to you, Superintendent Schneckloff.
We are very excited to have with us Mr. Dave Williams, as he's affectionately known in Chicago, Big Dave. As we had a call with him earlier this month to hear about the youth advocacy programs, and Dave is the vice president of the Midwest region for YAP, which is a youth advocacy program that you are going to learn about tonight. President Goza, myself, we meet monthly with the NAACP, and they wanted us to learn about this program, and what we saw with it were very effective strategies that are very research-based, and a group of a proven organization that when they come and dedicate resources, it makes a big difference. So without further ado, Dave, I will turn it over to you, and thank you so much for persevering through the technological difficulties that we have. And so thank you so much for joining us, and greatly appreciate you taking some time on a Monday to talk to us about your program. So I'll turn it over to you.
Oh, well, thank you. And I really appreciate the opportunity and, the patience. I had a really bad day today in terms of I woke up not feeling very well, but you gotta persevere, and so I couldn't pass up on this wonderful opportunity. Our leadership, Jeff Fleischer, Gary Ivory, and Stephanie Hart, send their regards. And but I'm here today, just to talk about youth advocate programs, kind of what we do. We've been around 46 years. We're in 32 states. We primarily work with juvenile justice, violence prevention, child welfare, behavioral health. And so we have a pretty good reputation. Like I said earlier, we're in like 32 states. I'm responsible as the Midwest Vice President for Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Kentucky. And so those are the states that I'm primarily responsible for. And it is my hope that we'll be coming to Iowa very, very, very soon. And we also have a couple opportunities in other states, but Iowa is a focus point of our leadership in terms of providing additional support. And we wanted to first talk about some of our programming. And one of our latest programs that serves specifically young people, school-age young people that are from the ages of 12 to 18. And now we have some older kids in the program from 12. We probably going to 12 to 20 because we're serving young people in a lot of young people in alternative schools. And that's called Choose to Change. Choose to Change is a program that we, in partnership, it's a three-legged stool, as I like to say, really four-legged. It's the University of Chicago Crime and Education Lab, is Children Home and Aid, is Chicago Public Schools, and youth advocate programs. So we're all working together in partnership to do this program. This year, we're very fortunate that we'll expand our program to 500 students that we'll serve at any given time. And then we'll be bringing in 2 CBO agencies that we'll be training. CBO is a community-based organization that will be offering C2C Informed programming this school year. As many of you are fully aware, there's been some challenges with getting young people back in school, supporting families to help them get the young people back in school and reinvigorated after the pandemic. But I can give you a little brief history on the program and its history and the overview. So the program's history, C2C, was a collaboration between philanthropy and those 3 agencies that I talked about earlier. Our partners at MacArthur Foundation and Get In Chicago funded the program, and we developed what's called a RCT, a randomized control trial, in partnership with the University of Chicago. We served at this point over 1,000 students through the program. We're currently in the expansion mode in terms of we'll be serving 500 students in the regular C2C program, and then we'll be training partners that will serve 100 students in each part. So we have 2 CBOs, community-based organizations that will be training in the C2C Informed model. Our research and evaluation results, I gave you an overview of our current efforts and then opportunities for collaboration. So I'll go to slide 3. Well, Choose to Change is a collaboration, as I spoke about earlier, a collaboration between youth advocate programs, children, home, and aid. C2C Engage is heavily impacted by violence and trauma by offering them individualized advocate wraparound services along with group-based trauma-informed therapy to help them to lead safe and successful lives. Slide 4. Choose to Change is an innovative approach to violence prevention. It's a 6-month program, behavioral health with wraparound support, relentless engagement, and advocacy. Choose to Change is now gone citywide. So we initially were just in one particular community. Our program has been focused by our chief partner, J.D. Chow, who oversees safety and security for Chicago Public Schools. And we'll be targeted to Tier 3 students. So these are the Tier 3 students are the highest risk students that CPS has. And we'll also be helping those kids get back in school, matriculate, and help them, support them academically, as well as, we call it securing the bag: behavior, attendance, and grades. And that's how we support principals and administrators to ensure that students are not causing disruption to the educational process, as well as developing quality relationships to help students stay in school. So we're community-based. We do what's called zip code recruiting. We recruit our staff from the community that have similar backgrounds. We run a thorough background check to make sure that they qualified sex offender, qualified staff to be able to work in the school environment and support students. We generated, rigorous evidence by doing this RCT, this randomized control trial, and we were able to generate some great outcomes. Slide 5, please. Relentless engagement. So what relentless engagement means is that we never give up. We go out, engage young people in the community, support meet their families. We ask the families the 4 principal questions. What do you need? How can we help? How can we work together as equal partners? And then how can you give back? And when we do relentless engagement, we refer thousands of students. We had a 60%, this particular program, Choose to Change, is a voluntary model. And so for 60% of the highest risk students to sign up for services was a tremendous outcome by our partners at the evidence by the support we receive from our partners. So the relentless engagement is we go out to the homes, we support the kids, meet their needs. We partner with the schools, we partner with the police to ensure that those students are attending school, they're safe, and they're participating academically, as well as their behavior. The applied learning, the advocates attend group therapy with the students. So many of our advocates have experienced similar experiences to young people. And the CBT groups, cognitive behavioral therapy groups, help the young people manage their trauma, and subsequently has an impact not only on the kids, the young people that we serve, but also the staff that we have engaged in the program. Sparks, which is the intervention, has the tools to interrupt and disrupt negative thought, help with conflict resolution, and help them build great self-esteem in terms of helping them with their decision making, as well as helping them with a vision for their own lives. And C2C staff brings strong lived experience and strong relationships with the kids. So when we identify young people that are from specific communities, they're referred to us by the principals, the deans, the coach, people that bring a lot of credibility to this work, that have passed sufficient background, and that are willing to work and have a never give up approach on these young people. We found that model of engagement to be very successful. Next slide, please. So referral sources. So we have community partners that refer young people, public agencies, individual CPS, and elementary schools and high schools. So if we were able to start this particular program in Davenport, we work with you all to work with the principals and identify the students that are the most in need, that are your famous students, the students that are causing the most challenges. We go in, engage, like I said earlier, ask the families the 4 principal questions. What do you need? How can we help? How can we work together as equal partners? And then how you can give back at the end. And go in and engage the families and serve the young people up to 15 hours a week, ensuring that their academic performance, they get their needs met, try to identify this particular program. I believe that our CEO wants to ensure that we have supported work. And supported work is a component of our program where they get paid internships, where we identify based on their interests, places where they can, the young people that we serve can identify employment. And sometimes just addressing their economic needs and bringing certain resources to the table helps kind of alleviate some of the negative behavior. And then also having an advocate working with you and your family and, giving you a sense of hope. And developing what's called a child and family team with the community involved with the school and establishing, solid relationships. As I spoke to earlier, recruitment, YAP directors and assistant decks reach out to engage youth that you all refer to us. And then we start engagement. We start activities. We work with the coach who's a clinician to provide the students' needs. On here they're saying 12 to 18, but we now have a little older because we have a lot of young people that are in the alternative schools that are a little bit older students. But initially, the initial population was, we felt as though the transition from what some people call middle school to high school was an area that we need to engage. And the average age of the student that we engage is about 16. It's moving up to about 17, but we also figured that we had to be able to engage those students that are transitioning from 6th, 7th, 8th grade to high school in order to ensure they have a healthy transition and receive the support they need, because that's a crucial period in student development. Next slide, please. So before the program, youth are referred to the program. YAP connects with the youth to the family, engage the youth. We consent, we get, the normal consent process. 1 month in, we're establishing relationships. We, figured out what the youth's goals are, met the needs, established the values, individualized plans. And then month 2 and 5, that's when they begin the group therapy sessions. The mentorship is between 5 and 12 hours, wraparound support and advocacy, and group activities for new experiences. So, and then at the 6-month mark, and sometimes it may be longer, sometimes it takes 7, sometimes it takes 8 months, but the youth discharge with a successful discharge plan. And then what we really, really try to do in the community is identify other resources that we can help our young people with warm handoffs to other resources that are in our community. So that's why it's important that we hire folks from Davenport that are familiar with the community, know where the resources are. So even when we bring the funds to a community, we, 95 to 96% of the revenue that we generate in the program that we bring to the program goes to people that live in the Davenport, the Davenport, Iowa community. Next slide, please. Virtual programming. So sometimes during the pandemic, we had situations where we've had to adapt the model, and we had to do some virtual telehealth services. Many of the clinicians had to do their sessions via virtual engagement. So we were creative enough to figure out a way to have help families with technology in terms of having access to technology, as well as learning those systems in terms of whether it was GoToMeeting, Google Classroom, or Zoom, where we were conducting whatever platform. We ensured that the families were familiar with the platform to ensure that they can engage in virtual learning. We check in regularly to assess the youth's needs. We provide, during the COVID, we provided families with groceries and essential goods. So many of our families, face employment disruptions, and so we had to go out in the community, find the available resources, do some deliveries to the families. In some cases, we had to go grocery shopping because many of the families didn't have transportation. So our COVID response was, to meet families' needs. And we continue to work throughout the pandemic. And then we were also very, very, very fortunate that the city of Chicago and Chicago Public Schools gave us the opportunity to have virtual employment for the young people. This past summer, we served 800 young people through a program called You're Not Alone. And I'll send TJ a link to that. There was, we had high school students who worked with seniors that were part of Chicago Housing Authority to really, learn about the history of Chicago, learn about, the importance of, their education, the importance of employment. And it was a great experience for the young people. Our particular program was highlighted in Capstone. So it was a really, really good opportunity for the young people to earn some income in preparation to returning to school. And in some cases, are going off to college. So our support during the COVID-19, our staff continued to work and show their commitment to the families. Do we have any questions so far?
No, you're doing great. Keep rolling.
Okay.
We typically ask our questions at the very end. So
okay, all right, thank you. And then next slide, please. So the research, motivation was Chicago youth have a diverse range of aspirations, but their road to success is often blocked or cut short by structural racism and inequities they cannot control. So again, some of these, what our program supports is, we try to straighten the road out for the young people in terms of some of the challenges that they just have by living in concentrated poverty, in segregated communities, and areas where they face trauma and stress. So what C2C does, along with the CBT component, is give those young people the skills to be able to navigate difficult circumstances. Next slide, please. So C2C, unlike any other school-based programs, engaging hard-to-reach populations. So the average, as I spoke to earlier, the average take-up rate was 61%, and this is a voluntary program. As many of you are fully aware, teenagers don't always want to cooperate, but for us to get a 61% take-up rate with this particular population was outstanding. C2C has a no eject, no reject policy. Unlike traditional school programs, C2C engages the youth marginally connected to school or already involved in the juvenile justice system. Next slide, please. So C2C serves youth who are just as involved or disconnected from school. So 21% of the kids in the program were homeless or had unstable housing. 37% of the kids have a prior arrest. 24% of the young people have an individualized education plan, 95% African American. 30% of the school days in the prior school year were missed. 22% were not enrolled in school at some point during the prior school year. The 41% female, and the average age was 16. So we were able, this is a snapshot of the population, some of the challenges that they came with, and some of the opportunities for us to really engage and demonstrate the effectiveness of the model. Next slide, please. So C2C operates in communities with the highest level of gun violence. Initially, we started in the Inglewood community, and many people have heard of the Inglewood community. And now we've branched out to the west side, expanding our catchment area, and we are serving the toughest communities that are in need of support and the resources necessary to support the young people in terms of their matriculation through the education system. Next slide, please. C2C was evaluated through a randomized control trial. So what a randomized control trial is one group gets treatment and then you have a control group. And then they evaluate the group that received treatment versus the control group. And some of the outcomes that we're going to talk about shortly were generated from this evaluation. Next slide, please. So C2C keeps you safe in the immediate and longer term. So over the course of 2.5 years, C2C's reduced violence by 48%. So by 48% violent crime arrests during the program. And most programs can do great work while the kids in program. But what we found with C2C is after a year and a half after completing the program, they still had a 38% reduction in violent crime arrests. And even 2.5 years later, almost 3 years later, it's still a 33% reduction in the probability of any arrest after 2.5 years. So those are tremendous outcomes. And there's been, a lot of documented of the success of the program. Next slide, please. So increase in attachment to school. So we increased attendance in school by at least 1 week, so plus 6%. And then we reduced in-school misconducts by 33%. Next slide, please. And, C2C leaves a lasting impression on the young people. One of the program participants said, the influence, intelligence, experience, he'd been there, done that. He'd been my age before, but I hadn't ever been his age. And I'm trying to get there, C2C alum. I've learned how to walk away and not act on everything and make permanent decisions on a temporary situation. So again, this is just a highlight of one of our violence prevention and education programs. I think are most reflective of TJ and I's conversation in terms of what the needs may be in the community, in terms of supporting young people that are at risk, that this may be a good intervention, but our CEO and our president and our chief program officer, we received funding from the Steve Ballmer Foundation, him and his wife, donated to YAP $20 million. And what YAP is doing is going to various communities and investing some of those resources to meet needs of the young people in those particular communities, young people and their families. Our CEO has agreed to invest $500,000 for the first year, and just want to be able to demonstrate the effectiveness of the model. And it is our hope that we can develop a sustainability program long-term to be able to sustain the project. We've done programs in my region. I have a program in Cincinnati that was sustained long-term, serving juvenile probation young people, using Ballmer funds as a startup. We also partnered with Milwaukee County Department of Human Services and their juvenile probation department. That program was sustained. And then in Chicago, we partnered with the Illinois Department of Juvenile Justice to do some reentry work during the COVID, and that program was sustained long term after they got the opportunity to witness the model, and they were able to make investments in our continued work. And then Chicago Public Schools, again, we went from, and this is always the goal in the work that we do in non-for-profits, is to move from private funding to public dollars by working together and demonstrating the effectiveness and the worthiness of the investment, and producing great outcomes. And this program is an example of we're going from Get In Chicago, MacArthur Foundation, the Chicago Bears, via the Sports Alliance, Pritzker Pucker donated initially and helped support this initial work. And then subsequently, long term, we were able to partner with the district in Chicago to sustain the work based on quality outcomes. So, we believe in, the proof is in the pudding. And our CEO and our president and our chief program officer believe in putting their money where their mouth is. They believe in, okay, we say this can work and we can be of assistance, and we'll pay for it, which is, to me, is one of the, to me, it's just fantastic. In my almost 30 years in social services, I've never had, somebody take their own time and treasure to, one, support communities, two, to train people in that community, in that model, and really to invest the capital in a community to ensure that all those resources go into that, all the revenue, the gift that we receive go into that community and support the young people that we all want to see great outcomes for the kids and families. If you have any questions or concerns, please let me know. And I'd like to thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Big Dave. I'm going to go around the room and ask board members if they have questions. I do appreciate you putting together a slideshow after Superintendent Schneckloff and myself met with you all.
Yes, sir.
And you pretty much touched on, I think, everything that we asked you to present to us, so I appreciate that. Are there any questions? Director Beck.
Hi. I'm Allison Beck. I'm one of the board members here. And first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for this presentation. I'm also a scientist, and seeing a research-based program with a randomized control trial really makes me happy. So I guess I have one or two questions for you. So do you all have, so Chicago's obviously a much, much bigger region than Davenport. The problems are not dissimilar, but we're a much smaller area. Do you have any idea approximately how many students you would be able to serve if you were to implement something like C2C here?
Well, that would be based on, I know that they want to invest $500,000 in the community. That would be based on you all's needs. So it's you all's program. I would say what kids need to be served at what school, and then we would develop a budget based on those needs. So if you say we need to serve 20 students at any given time, or it just depends. We'll adapt the model to the community that it goes in. So one of my directors always say, we adapt to the environment that we're in. So whether it be Davenport or Lexington, Kentucky, or wherever we are, we try to, like we ask the families, what do you need? How can we help? Well, that's the same thing that we were going into in the Davenport community. We asked, what do you need? Okay, when we first met with TJ, he described, hey, this is what we need. These are some of the ideas, and we figured that this model may work. If they need some enhancements in terms of what exactly will work best in the Davenport community, we'll be flexible enough to make sure that we adapt the model to the community that it's going into.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Okay.
Director Poston.
Mr. Williams, thank you for your presentation. One question I have is, you mentioned when you start the program, you engage family members or relatives and to get started in the program. One concern that I have, this year we had summer school where we used a lot of ESSER funds, hired a lot of teachers, identified students that were falling behind in school, and yet, so they were provided. This was provided at every building, and they were provided lunch and breakfast, and the participation was quite low. Overall, it was 30%. Some buildings, it was only 10%. So my concern is, how are you going to get these students engaged if they don't have family members there or family members that just don't care at all? And so that would be my question. How are you going to engage these people?
Well, yes, sir. That's always the question, and I definitely. Well, two things that we figured out. We sometimes we have an expression called herding the cats. We herd the cats. All cats think for themselves. They herd the cats. So what we do is we go out and meet the families where they at. So, and if we got to pick them up and bring them to school, whatever we got to do to get them there, that's what we do. We don't, that relentless engagement is the real deal. We go out, we engage, meet the kids where they at, work with mom. That's why we got to work with families, because some of the challenges that the young people have are not exclusive to them. So you got to work with the family, and then you got to knock on doors, ring doorbells, call them in the morning, whatever it takes to get them there, to improve that attendance. We call it, for the kids, in the kid language, we call it securing the bag. And what the bag means to us is behavior, attendance, and grades. So that's one of our key cornerstones of our work, is ensuring that young people are acting appropriately in school, that they are attending regularly, and we work with instruction to ensure that they're completing their assignments. And that's part of our work in terms of how we approach. And then sometimes we get creative. A lot of the kids don't like school food, and sometimes so we have some flex funds where we can get them lunch. Sometimes we can get them pizza, particularly for our groups. So part of that is incentivized in terms of part of our group will you go out, you attended school this week, you get to participate in these other extra activities. You haven't caused any disruption. We support. If the principal or the teacher or classroom instruction has some challenges with this particular student, instead of having necessarily call the police, they can maybe call his advocate, where he can take them home, or whatever the issue is in terms of giving the young person the support they need. So we definitely support instruction and participation, but it's always difficult with the population sometimes to get engagement, and that's why relentless engagement is a cornerstone of our work.
So to piggyback on that, I think one of the key components that interested me about this is that relentless piece is great. Our staff are sometimes relentless as well. They hire the staff from the community. They hire the staff from the neighborhood, and that to me, kind of like a navigator, looks like me from where I'm from, I think is a pretty important aspect that was interesting to me.
Did you have any other questions? Oh,
No.
Big Dave, could you explain to us? I don't know if you did that. How?
Yes, sir.
So say I don't remember what we were looking at. It would be a MOU or something like that. But if
Yes, sir.
if we decided we wanted to partner up with you all, how does it work? Can you give us like the process? You come in town. I know we talked about, I'm trying to remember the name, but you hire someone that obviously kind of runs the day-to-day, but they also look for all the funding and things like that. Can you give us a rundown on the process and how it works?
Well, we have a 60-day startup. We identify a director that is from that particular community. We develop, in partnership with the school district, we develop a sustainability committee in terms of being able to sustain the program long term. We identify the director identifies the staff in the community, and we get to work. And then the way we do that is an MOU, and the MOU can go through your legal folks, our legal folks, in terms of what our agreement is, and we ensure that we deliver the services that we agree to in the MOU, developed by both parties.
Thank you. I'm going to ask this question of the superintendent. What would the district's part be in this, and what would you be looking for the board to take action on, or whatever? What would be the district's role in this if we did
Sure,
this?
we would need to take action on that MOU, the partnership between this organization. So you heard Dave talk about, well, we would need to create that joint MOU in the first 60 days. That would be what we would build together, bring here, get the feedback, vote on.
Right. And then, like I said, we identify, the staff person. Generally our partners help us identify the staff people from the community that, you have confidence in, can, pull this off. So it's all a partnership. We work with our partners collaboratively and try to implement the programs and be successful in doing it.
Thank you for that. Again, Mr. Superintendent, I'll ask. So I'm assuming we would have to maybe offer like some space in a building for them to meet with the kids, or maybe the use of Chrome. I'm just trying to get all the information out for the board so that if we were to do an MOU,
Sure, it's very.
Everyone understands how this would work.
Yeah, it's very common for us to provide common spaces for students to meet, access to telephone, access to our internet, things like that. That's very common. We do that frequently with our other social services that we come into an MOU with. We have a good, strong background in MOUs through our youth mental health grant that we received 5 years ago, where we got into the business of creating really strong MOUs. So those are exactly the things that we would need to do. I think the big important piece for us that we would be monitoring closely is, and which I think is a great, you can tell that this organization is established because they bring their own fundraising board. I heard Dave talk about there's a group of people that immediately start thinking about the sustainability of something, because one-time funding coming in for 1 to 2 years showing the success. Well, at that time, we need people that are rooted into the community. There's a board of people that are constantly reviewing, searching for funds and sustainability. So I think that's another positive. So for us, the ability to have a working MOU of access to students. What does that access to our students in our buildings look like? Ensuring that we have a solid background check, ensuring that we have a solid data collection system to prove the value and the worth of the program. The Relentless part of this looks exactly like Check and Connect, which we have inside of our building and has shown success. When you get a Check and Connect mentor, you don't let go, and that's exactly what this program looks like. So that's what we would be searching for in that MOU with C2C.
All righty. Well, again, we'll draft it. We have our, like I said, we talked about earlier, we got a whole development department. That's all they do is look for funds for programs. We just need to get in the community, show some success, get buy-in from local investors. Our hope is also that at some point the board will maybe consider contributing to efforts and just demonstrate our effectiveness in the community and let it sell itself.
Director Snyder, you have a question?
Dave, thank you for the presentation. I
Yes,
know
sir.
there are a tremendous number of youth intervention programs in the Chicagoland area. What would you say sets C2C apart from the rest of them?
The rigor of that randomized control trial. I think that it informed our practice. That when you go through a randomized control trial in like a non-for-profit organization, you have to really inform your inform your practice, and also really understand the logical model and have fidelity to what you say you're going to do in it. So it's a learning experience in terms of one of the benefits of working with YAP is that we have resource-rich environment in terms of what I mean is we got the support center. We got good leadership in terms of oversight. I'm not that far away. I'm 2.5 hours away. We have a smaller program in Peoria already that we already operate. So that's not far away. So putting us all in the Midwest region and with all those supports and all those key learnings that we've had going through this experience of a randomized control trial has helped us elevate our profile. Also being kind of how we operate is kind of apolitical. So we don't really get involved with politics on that. We just do what's right. And so we've experienced a lot of, and I don't want to get too religious, but a lot of grace. We've experienced a lot of grace in terms of us doing good work, people seeing the good work and seeing this impact, and then having the supporting evidence to say this actually works. Just helps our organization, helps our programs tremendously, because everything now is evidence based. You gotta have, the proof got to be in the pudding. You got to produce evidence to say that this works. And if you can't produce the evidence, people are not likely to make those investments, whether it be public or private dollars. Because right now there's a lot of funds out there, because of the COVID funding, but in normal climates, there are limited funds, and the funds have to be targeted to things that work. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Are there any other questions for Dave? Do you have anything else? Did you have anything else you wanted to add, Dave?
No, sir. I just, like I said, I look forward to the opportunity. One of the things about working at YAP is you could do it in Chicago, but let's figure out if we can do it in Davenport. If we can have an impact, I'm a guy that likes challenges. And so given this opportunity, to prove our effectiveness is something that I wholeheartedly support. And I think the commitment to the communities and the support we can give young people, I think we can have a pretty good outcomes.
Thank you. If you could just hang on for a few minutes, Dave. What I'm going to do, I'm going to go around and ask board members kind of where they're at. Again, I do appreciate you putting this presentation together for us. I do appreciate you all meeting with myself and the superintendent. I think we met for like an hour or something a little bit ago. Myself, I think this will be a good thing for us. I mean, especially when we went over the SRO data and, calls for service and stuff. That's not 4,000 kids or 400 kids doing that. That's maybe 10 to 20 that are, doing a lot of this stuff. And if this is something that a program that we could partner with to kind of help our youth out, I mean, look at the things that are going on in our neighborhoods out in the community. And then it pours over into the schools. Well, then if you have that disruption during the school day, that takes away from students' learning time, and other kids and things like that. And, I mean, obviously it's a proven program. They're all over the country. So I don't even know how it came about, but I'm glad they reached out, and I'm glad we were able to meet with them. And then I wanted to bring it to the board to kind of see what the board thought of this. Obviously, on our part, it would just be an MOU, kind of like we have for the SROs and things like that. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go around the room and kind of ask you all where you're at with this. And if you have any other questions that come up, that's why I kind of had Dave hang out. Did you have anything you wanted to add?
No, that's exactly what I was going to say.
Okay. I'll start with Director Beck.
I love that this program is evidence-based, has a focus on sustainability right from the beginning, and also is focused on using people from the community itself, which is part of that sustainability piece. Given the issues that we have, I think it would be something that we could definitely form a really strong partnership with, and with the ultimate goal of our community supporting all of these kids in the future. So
Thank you, Director Snyder.
I'm in favor of discussing it further. I have obvious questions and concerns from funding to how does this differ from intervention programs that we already have, say Boys Town. How many students can we serve with it? Lots and lots of questions, but I definitely, the control group part of it is the intriguing part that I would definitely be willing to discuss and explore.
Thank you, Director Poston.
Well, yeah, just like Jamie said, I have a lot of questions too, but I think it's something that we definitely need to look into. I've made the comments before that we only have these kids for 6 to 7 hours every school day, and we need the community support. But I will say I'm frustrated as hell with the participation we had in summer school. And so to me, sometimes it's almost you've got to educate the parents and, tell them, hey, you need to be or have your kids participating in these programs. So, it's tough, and it looks like, this program, the Youth Advocacy Program, has worked well in Chicago, and I think it's definitely worth taking a look at.
Thank you, Director Klein Jerome.
I also think it's worth taking a look at. I like the fact that it's not when the money runs out in 2 years, we can't sustain it, that we're looking at this as a long-term fix. And I think it's a good thing that they're trying to work with the parents as well on this and get that part involved, because if you don't have those parents behind it, there's not a lot of things that we can do in a school day. So it is worth looking into.
Did you have anything you wanted to add? Would
Sure.
you be able to answer some of the questions?
Sure. So, how about Dave and I work up an MOU and work on some of the questions that we had, and if we could gather some of those questions that we had from tonight by sending those to Brenda. I think you had some great questions. Sustainability. So you had some really good ones, Jamie. So if we could capture those and everybody else the questions that you had and make sure that they're addressed in the next presentation. So I recommend that we build the MOU, bring it before the board for discussion, and if we decide to move forward, then we can vote it in and get started. Sounds like a natural progression that we're used to utilizing.
And for that discussion part two, what role the district has as far as financially and all that?
Sure, absolutely.
So
We'll
that
leave
way
in.
we know how it's working and what we can do or whatever. Or is there anything else anyone else would want to know as far as information for them to get together for us for another discussion after an MOU, or something you'd want to see included in that or anything like that?
No, but I don't think Linda got
You didn't ask Linda.
She's abstaining.
Got it.
Director Beck.
One thing that I would want to see is how this group works with the SROs as well, because I know we just worked up an agreement with our SROs to collect data and things like that. And if these are students who are justice involved somehow, typically they're going to also be the ones that are interacting with the SROs. So I think a little bit of information on how they work with school resource officers would be helpful for me. Thank you.
TJ, is this something that we might be able to partner with like the city on as well, since it's an outside, and obviously some of this stuff's going to be done outside of the school day?
The majority of this work is done outside the school day. So one of the things that is very positive that I hear that we have programs like this inside of our city. They're incredibly expensive. They can only do a handful of kids at a time because of the services that it takes to wrap around the family. This is a family support. So this is an all-out blitz on supporting the family. And it's outside of the school. It's 24/7. And it's an expensive model, but if you get 20 to 50 kids, boy, that can really make a difference right now. And they're running towards the greatest need. Not a lot of people are doing that right now. And they say bring it on. So absolutely. So for our next step, I have get questions to Brenda. Brenda will gather those questions. Dave and I will work on the MOU, and usually MOUs talk about finance, talk about the agreements that we begin to work in, and we can go from there.
So you want board members to send their questions to Brenda?
Yeah, that they heard from tonight, because I heard some really good ones, and I just want to make sure that we are addressing those.
She'll probably have to go back and watch the video, and she could probably capture a bunch of that. Is there anything else on this topic, or anything else anyone would want to see? Thank you for hanging out with us, Big Dave. We appreciate it.
I'm sorry I couldn't be there in person. I'd much rather be there in person, but I woke up, man, it was a bad, I had a bad, I thought I was going to go to urgent care, but I do appreciate your time, your patience, and thank you for even considering us in this opportunity. Like I said, we want to serve the toughest kids, and hopefully have an impact in the community. And we just appreciate even your consideration. So thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Dave. And I'll be reaching out to you soon.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Did you have anything else you wanted to add on this? Or
Nope.
you ready to move on to the next thing?
Yes, sir.
The citation update?
The Davenport plan? You bet. So, Brenda, if you wouldn't mind pulling up the first slide. Board members, I sent you this very simple presentation to you. And the format of this is I have the entirety of the Davenport plan linked in the blue link at the top. I emailed this to you earlier today so you can view it. And as a matter of fact, I see many of you jumping on there right now. So what I would like to do is I would like to review and just kind of go over what exactly our Davenport plan sheet looks like. And this sheet is what generates the monthly report that President Goza and Vice President Hayes and myself go before the State Board of Education in review. So Brenda, if you wouldn't mind clicking on the spreadsheet, please. It's that blue hyperlink at the very top of the slide. Thank you very much. And at the very bottom, when it pops up, Brenda, at the very bottom, verify. What? Yep. Give me 1 second.
I see Brenda in there already.
I'll have to share that access with you guys at another point. So if we could look up at the screen here, I'll kind of go through it. If you look at the bottom of the spreadsheet, there are 3 tabs. Right now there are 3 tabs. Action Plan 21-22, Progress Monitoring 21-22, and then August. And this should be a very similar format to our school board members because this is what our previous Davenport plan looked like from the previous school year. So if you click on the Davenport Action Plan 21-22, first tab on the left, I would like to highlight the center section. So if you look at the center section at the very top, see how it says ASONDJ. That's obviously August, September, October, November, December. Those are the months that you're in. Brenda, if you wouldn't mind scrolling all the way to the bottom. There is a code. Maybe scroll up a little more. It starts at by 42, Brenda. And I think, yeah, there we go. So if you look, here's the code. If there's an A in that sheet in the column, it's assess. C is continue, D is develop, E is evaluate, I is implement, S is sustain, and X means it's due the next month. So Brenda, if you would please scroll back up to the top. And the categories that we have are leadership. So if you look, the next column I'd like you to look at is priority. What we did from the months of June, July, and August, where we are right now, we spent our time focusing on the priorities that were in pink that are marked immediate. So if you look at row number 6, immediate, you can see that in August and September, we're supposed to assess, development, and starting in October, implement. And so what I've done today is I have put together a little bit of a PowerPoint presentation to kind of review just exactly what we've done in the months of August, July, and August, and the start of September. I will go back in and give you access to this so you can get into it and review it if you like. So that just flows all the way down the sheet that way. And so, Brenda, if you wouldn't mind, please, going to the next tab at the bottom, Progress Monitoring 21-22. Consider this to be your dashboard. So if you look, it looks very similar. You can see the priorities are there, the state board established goal, and then from there, there's the most recent percentages, and then there's the most recent number markings. But this is how you'll be able to compare 1 month to the next. So when it's time to do the September one, we'll put that in there. When it's time to do the October one, we'll put that in there. And that's how we will continue to monitor our progress. So if you would please go down to the very bottom of this sheet, Brenda, it would be around 42 again. Thank you, Brenda. You will see, let's go to, that has the same progress monitoring on there as assess, continue, develop, evaluate. So the purpose of this sheet is to allow you to see the difference between August, September, October, and moving forward. Now, this is a sheet that the Department of Ed owns, and so each time we upload, they have to tweak some of their formulas. So the August sheet is supposed to populate some of the other things, and when they get it, they tweak it. So Brenda, please go to the August sheet and scroll all the way to the bottom. I think it is, again, 44 and 48. You're doing a great job keeping up, Brenda. So this one I want to share with you because this is where you see the numbering system. So if a 0 indicates that we haven't started yet, that means there's little to no organized effort around this, and the completions points are 0 to 5%. 1 means that we've started it, and that's anywhere from 6 to 35 completion. A 2 means you're working. That means a team of people are done developing a plan and they're in active implementation phase. 3 means you're nearing completion. This means a team of people are nearing completion of the defined work. And 4 means you're complete. That means their team is 96 to 100% complete. And so as you review this, Brenda, if you'd like to go to the top, I can share with you in rows 6 and 7, Brenda. Brenda, you are knocking it out of the park. Let's just say row 6, or what's she on? Row 6 would be fine, Brenda. So you can see that we've marked database decision-making immediate. We've marked it at 3. We're 60% short, or we're 60% of the way there. And then we put our notes in there. What did we do? How are we accomplishing that? And then what is the evidence of that? So Director Poston, you were actually at this day, the District Student Achievement Team Day, where we rolled out some of our database decision-making information in that work session. So that's kind of the overview of that sheet. That's how it will tally. That's how it will work. It is up to us. When I say us, it's our cabinet to fill this out. So our cabinet, we meet on Mondays and Wednesdays as an executive cabinet with everybody, and an instructional cabinet on Wednesdays, and we worked hard to put in the things that we are focusing on now. One thing that you'll notice as you go through this sheet, we are really focusing on the immediates. So those are the things that we have to, those are the do-nows. So Brenda, if you wouldn't mind going back over to the PowerPoint presentation and clicking on slide 2. And I'll kind of read to you some of the highlights that we're working on. And some of these should be reminders to you because we've been sharing this with you all along the way. So really, this should be you should feel this as a success, as establishing some of those database decision-making processes. Dan would call them a SWOT. You know, some of us would have different from our own professional worlds. What does this look like? But our cabinet has worked very closely with the MBA and the Mississippi Bend to set a data review cycle that includes the continuous improvement process. And I'd like to remind our board that our continuous improvement process is what's the current state of where we are, and you'll see this interwoven in everything that we do. What are the strengths and barriers? Create a plan, implement, and assess its impact. And you remember that document, that's just a giant circle because that continues. The data, this is a great cycle, and it's been proven to work inside of our district, and so we're going to really put this into a system. The data will be reviewed first by the buildings, then the instructional cabinet will prepare data to be shared with our district student achievement team. So that's our district level team to brainstorm our next steps in resource allocation. The culmination of this will be board presentations and to where the community will have an opportunity to review. This plan has been developed and communicated. So the first time that you will see this, Dr. Stevenson is going to be presenting this at one of our next regular school board meetings, our flow of our data review process. I know many of you have asked to hear about math data and different data points, behavior data. There's a backwards map from the start of the year that Dr. Stevenson and the Learning Results team have been working on, and that's what we're going to do. At our next regular meeting, we're going to share that with you, and then we're going to start running this data through that exact process that you saw. So next slide, Brenda. So continuing on with that, I'm extremely proud of the work that was done in July. The district and the Mississippi Bend AEA, they worked on MTSS and PBIS utilizing the CIP process. The plan was jointly created in July. Upon the arrival of our new cabinet members, it was amazing. They jumped right in and just picked up the rope and immediately started doing work. The district introduced this MTSS plan, early literacy, to building leadership teams on August 10th, and that was our Building Leadership Day kickoff at the Wargalski Center, where we had our new learning, we set the stage, our teams created plans, and then they kicked their year off. The implementation of this plan has begun at all grade levels, pre-K through 12. Brenda, next slide. So MTSS early literacy. So when you hear the ELIT, the early literacy implementation team, this is a reoccurring team, and it comprises of Davenport school people, Davenport school employees, and the Mississippi Bend AEA. And it also has a teacher calibration team, which I think is critical to us, and it has practicing classroom teachers that are doing the work, giving the feedback. And we call those calibration teams because we want their feedback. And that's been something that the board has been very insistent on, and I'm actually very proud of the board for holding us to that. It's outstanding. There's also a principal calibration team, and obviously that flows to the instructional cabinet. Each step of the early literacy team is communicated through these calibration teams. So that's how we work our way through, and it gives us great feedback, kind of an accordion. So once we have decided this is what we want to implement, our structure is that we have leadership academies, and those leadership academies are where we can determine how often that happens, but our building leadership teams hear new learning, and then that's implemented inside of our buildings with the support of our instructional leadership directors, our directors of learning and results and equity and student supports, and then also our implementation leads in the building to help support the implementation. One of the more specific outcomes, and you guys were instrumental in this, is our resource mapping. You can remember in the last month we've adopted a new resource and really streamlined the opportunities and resources that are in our early literacy, particularly with our 95% group. The next one, 100% of our pre-K grade pre-K 6 building administrators, teacher innovators, and reading coaches attended training on August 9th. That's the day before our big BSAT summit. regarding the utilization of universal tier tools. The training set the stage for the BSAT Summit the next day. 100% of our pre-K grade level teams, the student achievement teams, reviewed the district and building current realities of the BSAT Summit. So they began to, what does that look like inside my building? So that way, on the first week of school, interventions were started. And I'm incredibly proud of that, because that's really hard work to get off and going. But when you have the data for where are your students and how are they reading, you really should start as soon as possible. Going into PBIS, so a lot of this work we had started. We were on the right path. We just needed to pause it to get to crisis response violence prevention. And so we have already begun to gather some of our social emotional behavioral health initiatives. Right now, our program director, Lisa Baxter, is reviewing and updating that list. We have a district PBIS team that is jointly planning with the Mississippi Bend AEA. And as you can see, they meet quite regularly over the month of July. This implementation team now has continued that work. There are really strong components of PBIS that we need to continue to implement. And again, and I won't repeat it, but the new learning for that happened on the 10th, and that kind of kicked it off. A visual that we like to utilize is schools are like ships, and you have to load everything in the ship, and then it leaves the harbor for the school year. And so that BSAT Summit is where we put all the tools necessary that we're going to need to go on the school journey. And so you think about that August 10th day, and then all along the way we recalibrate, we go into new learning with that. Slide 7, Brenda. And this is the last one, and I'll be done talking, I promise. So our parent engagement. We continue to work with and I'm very proud of the work that we're doing with the NAACP, the LULAC, different community groups. We're working on one of the mayor's task force. We brainstormed with community agency about going into different parts of our neighborhoods to hear that voice. We have, Dan and I have planned out visiting all of the city council meetings and other different organizations like Rotary and things of that. I've been to one Rotary, to where we're going to continue to go and tell our story and get feedback from our community members. It's also really critical as we start our long-range facility planning that we're going to have a really robust community engagement process where we have a revamped stakeholders. We're going to hear their voice. We're going to go out to the community. We're going to have representation from every building, both staff and parents. And we're going to really set the stage for what does our community want moving forward. And I think that process is much bigger than a long-range facility planning, because it really will help set the stage. And so those are our last two bullets there. So that was kind of a summary of that really long spreadsheet document. And when I go through there, it's very easy for me to tell that story because we've lived it. And everybody sitting at this square table, we've lived it, we've breathed it, and the people in the back have done such an outstanding job getting our school off to a wonderful start. We're reestablishing relationships with the AEA that should have never stopped, and that collaboration is absolutely critical for the students of Davenport, because the AEA has wonderful resources, and that's exactly what we're reestablishing. And so, with that being said, that concludes my citation update, but I'm more than welcome to hear any questions that you may have now.
I think Karen had hers up first. It looks like everybody's got questions for you. Boom, boom.
And Brenda, I don't know where it is, but could you find the ones that in the citation that specifically address the school board? I guess my question is, what's it going to take to get us to 100% and we're done? And who is it that's rating us in terms of school board? Is it Dan?
No, I'm rating it. And so the ratings that we put on there, like local school boards, continue to work on implementing effective structures, agendas. That's wonderful. The part that we were not completely comfortable with is the meetings include database decision making. We haven't brought you that. So when we get to a regular cycle where we're reviewing data regularly, and it's really impactful, that's when we'll mark that 100%. So it's really our own feedback on that one there. You can see that the leadership includes training on Davenport board members and making corrective actions. They move that to sustain because you guys have worked really hard. I know Dan and Linda and myself, we meet with IESB. I doubt anybody is in depth every month. Great review, heading in the right direction. So that one is sustained. So I mean, that's a huge celebration for our school board members and the work that you've done. It's quite incredible. So I mean, that's a celebration, Karen. That's why we didn't mark that, because we don't feel like we have brought forth that cycle for you. And so once we do that, we feel very confident that we will be able to mark that one done. This is our plan. So that's kind of where the thought process was on that.
And then my second question is November. November sticks in my head. Is 60% on a lot of these things going to be enough to get our accreditation back and get us off this path we've been down for over a year? I mean, it troubles me we're not at more 100%, and so.
No, that's a very good point. And if you look at, let me try and find one. 14, please, Brenda. So you look at MTSS or literacy. It says develop, implement, due in October. So if we were filling this out 1 month later, it'd be 100%. So if you really want to dig in and see, okay, where are we? Are we ahead, late? Really, where are we in terms of our accomplishing these goals? That's where you can tell. And so to be an accurate reflection of exactly where you are is probably the most important thing, because it's our plan to utilize our own progress. And so I am very confident, since some of those 30s will be 50s and some of those 50s will be 70s and move up to 3s and 4s. And so I'm very confident that we're doing everything that we're being asked to do at the appropriate speed without overwhelming the system. That's a great question, though. Thank you.
Is that all you had? Director Poshin?
Well, I had two questions, but Karen already nailed one of them. But again, just to kind of echo what she said, is I plan on, come November, we have full accreditation. So as a superintendent and as a staff, that's where we should be headed. And I'm planning on that we're going to have full accreditation come November. My other question is concerning early literacy, and we're talking about teacher calibration groups and principal calibration groups. How many people, how many teachers, how many principals is that?
So the teacher calibration group has about 20 teachers on it.
Okay.
The principal calibration group has anywhere from 6 to 8 principals on it. But I would say that we've tweaked that. We are currently meeting once a week with all of our administrators. So the feedback that we're getting from our administrators is so much better. The other process that we kind of hinted at in here will involve all the teachers. And this can't happen very often because it'll overwhelm the teachers. But let's say if we're going through a data review process, and I'm going to try and use a visual here, but we have our district leadership team that would review data. And then we have our building leadership teams that's comprised of all teachers and counselors and social, things of that nature inside the building. Well, then at every grade level, at every department, we have teacher student achievement teams, CTTs, and you might have heard of them, that collaborative teacher teams. So when we're looking at getting feedback, we can so picture a cascade that goes boom, 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 and then goes back up. That's the cycle that we're talking about. So are we proficient at that? No, we're not proficient at that. That's the direction we're heading. Because that really, when it's necessary, that's when we go down our cascade of information and gather that all the way up through. Now, there's even another layer of that, and we did this for those board members that remember going through the special education handbook, or the the handbook for our special education that has to be approved by the Department of Education. We then asked, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Our service delivery plan. We then had every building hold a parent and family feedback night based off of that. We put it on our website. We got feedback. So we have a model utilizing the current structure that we have that really provides an equity and voice with teachers, allows our building leadership teams to give the feedback, and then that brings it up for the district leadership team to really see what our next steps are, make resource allocations, and then make very strong, confident decisions. So that's a direction that we're heading with our data cycle, utilizing the current system that we have, so we're not recreating the wheel, to make sure we have a lot of a voice in there, because that's very important to our system.
Well, I want to make sure that the input is coming from the teachers and principals. Okay, administration should be there for support and to help them along and give them guidance. But again, I want it coming from the teachers and principals. That's where the early literacy program, that should be coming from them. Okay, they're the ones that are hands-on with the students. So I want to make sure that it's coming from them.
Thank you for that feedback.
Was that all you had? Director Hayes?
My question was pertaining to the teacher principal calibration teams, but I think you clarified that. President Ghost and myself often joke that this year we must get the Boardsmanship Award because we've had lots of workshops, lots of trainings, lots of assistance from Luann and Harry. So I think we will totally nail that one for sure. Another thing that I want to do is thank everyone, because you can hear that our concerns have been answered. You know, things that we've said, they've pretty much been nailed in each one of the explanations that Superintendent Sneckloff gave us. So I guess I don't want this conversation to go unnoticed without thanking everyone who's been a part, because we listen to the outcome. We don't necessarily be involved with any of the work that goes into the buildings, but you can see that it's coming back, and we have a way that we can track it and make sure that those things are being addressed. And if not, we have the opportunity to question it. So thank everyone involved.
Director Snyder?
I think I ask this same question every time when we do an update, and Karen kind of already asked it, but I'm going to rephrase it. Is there any areas where the state does not agree with us as far as our progress? You know, have they provided any feedback in any areas where we're not progressing at a level that meets their expectations?
So this document was due on the 2nd because they have to have it uploaded for their board docs, I think sometime this week, because their school board meeting's on the 16th. And usually get pretty regular feedback from the Department of Education on that. What we've been navigating on is we've been navigating on a front loading. So before we even start, we get the approval. Before we even start, we are ensuring that we're heading on the right path with the appropriate pacing. And so our conduit for that, which allows us to continue moving at the speed that we need to continue implementing our plan, is Bill, Shane, and Kim. So they're the ones that, while we're moving, really double back with the Department of Education to ensure we're on the right path with the right pacing. And so I would say that the feedback that we've gotten about creating our plans, building consensus, doing things with the continuous improvement model in mind has been really good feedback.
This is new this year, Director Snyder. There were a couple times last year where we had to make maybe a little bit of negotiation.
Can you come up to the microphone so the folks at home can hear you as well?
there were a few times last year where we had to maybe calibrate and course correct a little bit with the Department of Education. We're confident that given the amount of feedback that we've received on this year's plans with PBIS, MTSS, and early literacy, that we're on the right track. This is the first time that we've actually had to score. So there's a chance that we might get some feedback where we say those are miscalibrated judgments. That's for sure conceivable. But I don't think it's going to be something that is a hard pivot one way or the other. It's going to be probably some minor course corrections, but we do have to, like, these are judgments. We try to use the evidence to substantiate that, but there might be another perspective on that. And if that's the case, then we work through that disagreement and try to land on a solution that we think is a good place for Davenport.
Thank you.
Is that all you had, Director Snyder? Director Beck.
I kind of had some of the same questions, but I guess looking forward for sustainability, one of the things I've been thinking about is this. You talked about the ship model and launching, all the materials. I'm wondering, when we are implementing these big changes, right? And we have a launch day, like for instance, when we did the 95% curriculum, some of the PBIS things, our launch day is like August 10th, 2 weeks before school starts, right? And I guess my question is, are we confident we're not overloading the system by doing that type of thing? Would it be, and I understand the timing now, but maybe in the future for sustainability purposes, is this something we can start thinking about doing in April or May? If we know that big changes are coming along, we introduce them in April and May so that August isn't the first time, but it's more of a refresher, right? And that way we have a little bit more fidelity when we're implementing things rather than trying to work through the trial and error of implementation at the same time we are expecting teachers to do it. Does that make sense? Almost, I'm not saying we have to pilot everything, but sort of, just to me, it seems like this would be a more sustainable process in the future. But I don't know how that fits in with where we are right now.
So I think that's a very valid question. The first part of it, the sustainability model. Here's what I know in education: when you have a team of people that have a plan and they roll that plan out, it is very effective. Example: when I go to our building student achievement team meeting and I watch a principal lead his or her building team on what does the first, second, third, and fourth days look like, and then you go into the building and you see that actually happen, that's the power of bringing a team together in April, May, June, July. So it's not so it's more sustainable over time. You chunk it out a lot better, and that's typically our plan.
Okay.
So we do kick things off with our very, very unique brand new cabinet coming in starting July 1, transitioning other people. That work didn't start until July 1. And that's why you hear me refer to the Herculean effort of July. And so the BSAT Summit is very effective because it allows buildings to come together and say, okay, the information that you heard, where are you on a continuum, and what are your next steps, and build that plan for you. What is not okay is to stay in one spot. You have to continue to improve. You have to put a plan in place, you have to assess it, and you have to move forward. So what does that look like in the future, to your point? Going through our data cycles, noticing what we need to change. Hopefully we don't have another really odd year where our data doesn't come back and it's very difficult to break down. We break our data down in a normal cycle. We do a needs assessment. Each building does a needs assessment. They determine what their next steps are, to Director Poshton's point. And then we kick the year off or go into the summer months for planning. A lot of our buildings plan. And then when we come into the BSAT Summit, usually in the first week of August, they usually have a pretty decent idea of the direction that you're going, the Davenport plan that we have, and it's very clear what are we trying to accomplish now, what are our next steps, and then it's our job as the leaders of the district to help the implementation, help support, and that's why it's really critical that those support leads are out in buildings. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, basically, sort of the way we've done things over the last year or two is not necessarily the way we will always do things, because we've been on sort of an accelerated timetable, and obviously the world's been, pandemic.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would say that's very fair.
Okay.
And I would say that the process that I just described is not brand new. It's just tweaking, maybe less, maybe more ownership at the building level. Those kinds of things that we're beginning to discover. So I think that's also really important to know and understand that our buildings are used to that process.
Okay.
So
Well,
thank you for the question.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. I would like to echo Director Postion's point that I want to make sure that we should make sure that we're hearing that feedback from the teachers regularly. They're the ones that are on the ground, so to speak, the front line. And so I think in the past, we've tended to dictate from on high, not me personally, but we as a district, and not listen to that feedback from our teachers. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that cycles through with the data.
Any other question? Director Posture.
Just one quick one. There has been nothing in the last 2 months that we've been late on as far as the state is concerned. Is that correct?
That is correct. I mean, I can't think of anything.
Any other questions? I will say I appreciate the presentation on this and kind of front loaded this on how you were going to roll it out and then did that. I will say from going to all the state board meetings, it's definitely a different atmosphere when you walk in there. And I always ask, and you can ask Vice President Hayes this, I always ask Dr. Lebo and Miss Williamson how we're doing. Are the reports getting in on time? Is there anything that we need to be doing more of? And it's all been positive. I'm gonna knock on wood because I don't want to jinx that. But they've been very positive. Even the state board members that wouldn't even talk to us come and talk to us and say, you guys are all doing, guys and gals are all doing great work and stuff like that. So I appreciate that. I do, again, along with everyone else, we have to get our accreditation back in November for sure. But I don't want to see this thing go away. I mean, whether things are 100% or whatever, but we need to have something in place like this to keep us accountable, to make sure we're still continuing to do these things so nothing falls by the wayside. And I think I agree as well. Obviously you got to have feedback from your teachers and the people there in the classrooms. But I think a lot of that stigma that is out there is because our district would always roll something out up here and then you're done and I'll see you next year and not be there to offer the supports and stuff. So I'm hoping that changes with the way that things are structured now. And I'm sure Director Klein-Jerome can attest to that. Hey, go do this and then I'll check on you next year or whatever. It doesn't sound like we're doing that stuff now. Well, obviously. I'm just glad that we have a good team and we're getting a lot of these things done. And again, the state board meetings have been a lot more pleasant to go to. And they're really quiet when you walk in there. So when someone starts hacking up a lung, you always hand them a bottle of water. But again, they've been, great meetings, and then usually on that 2.5 hour truck ride home, we'll start discussing things, what can we do for the next one or whatever. And the same way on the way up there, it's a lot of windshield time, but I make it a point to be there in person to show them that we are serious and we do mean that we want to get this stuff done. And Yeah, and they've always been very appreciative. They tell us we don't have to come, but we always show up. So, and again, I think our board as a whole, even though I know Director Potts isn't here tonight, but we've been putting a lot of work in, and really, so to speak, putting our money where our mouth is with all of our trainings and everything like that. So I think I'm very appreciative of all of you for putting your extra time and effort into this. Obviously, we don't get paid for none of this, and it is a big time commitment. And everybody at home can be a Monday morning quarterback, but at the end of the day, it's all of us that are sitting right here that really, put the boots to the pavement. So again, I do appreciate all of you, and I do believe we have more board points than any board in the state of Iowa from the last time I asked it in. So you guys are doing a great job. We appreciate it. Again, I do appreciate the way you rolled the plan out. We'll have to get this on a more recurring loop. And then especially how you walked us through it, it was a lot better. I'm glad that everything's been on time. There's names to it. There's percentages. There's notes in there. That stuff, we weren't doing before. So I'm glad we're on the right track and getting things done. Because at the end of the day, as long as all this stuff's going good, it's for the betterment of our kids and the district. So that's what it's all about. That's what we're all here for. Is there any other questions? Closing statements?
If this format is acceptable to the school board, I'll just continue to do that. I'll share the sheet, do the highlights of what we had, and I'll put it right before we turn it in. I think before is even better to give a little bit more feedback. So I'll work with the agenda committee to get it placed on a regular occurring timeline.
Is everyone good with how this was rolled out like this, or you want to see anything different? I didn't even have to ask for yes or no's. Everyone's good with it. Appreciate it. Is there anything else?
That concludes my presentation.
That's it. All right. May I have a motion to adjourn? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Meeting adjourned.